Good day to all. This will be our discussion of the first topic or chapter of our course, Management Information Systems, which is or that is Business Information Systems and Overview. To begin formally with our course, let's have a question, which is, does IT or information technology matter? And here is our study or group study from Hackett, in which it is asked, does IT matter? And then based on this study or group study, the conclusion is that the answer is yes. And it has been found out that the world's best performing companies spent 7% more per employee on IT than typical companies. And as a result, they were able to recoup, meaning to recover their investment fivefold or 5 times higher than the other companies because of the lower operational costs. Therefore, in that case, the contemporary or today's business professionals must know how to develop and use IT in their operations. And then we need to know that in a digital system, the digital information, meaning the information converted into digital format or in computerized format, can be stored and communicated by means of electromagnetic signals. So these signals are being transferred or transmitted using computers and using electromagnetic signals, which are intangible in that sense, and which would create extremely fast transmission or transfer of information, and then the digital copy is an exact copy of the original. And that's the good thing about creating multiple copies. And then accuracy and speed make digital systems powerful, useful, and important. So by this, by being able to transfer information faster, then decision making can also be done by people involved because they can also make their decisions faster and quicker as compared with traditional times where information has to be transferred physically. Then the purpose of information systems, of course, is to help the businesses as well as the key managers to make sound decisions and, of course, to be able to solve certain problems in the company, which would mean any undesirable situation. And then decisions are made when there are more than one solutions to problem, because it's possible that there can be alternative courses of action or options of the actions that we have to take, but we have to decide as to which one would be the best or the better depending on the case or situation. Now, to be able to solve problems and decide would require certain information. Then here are the keys to success in business. We should be able to gather correct information efficiently, and then we store that information and use whatever has been stored to proper purposes or goals. And then the purpose of information systems or IS is, of course, to be able to support the activities as stated above, the three: gathering of the information, storing, and using them. Then we have to take note that data, information, and system are commonly used terms, and we should be able, because it is very important to understand their similarities and differences. Now, data is a given or a fact. So it is also called as the unprocessed information. So raw data, that is. It can be any number, statement, or picture. It can be both quantitative or qualitative, meaning to say it can be both in numbers. And then we can also say that it can also be in descriptions or narratives or paragraphs. And then this is our raw material in the production of information, meaning to say this is our input. If processed, then the data or data becomes information. So facts are conclusions that have meaning within context. So there has been already a process that is incorporated to be able to translate the input that is data into output that is information. So we manipulate data in order to make useful information. So from the data, we can actually create new information such as averages, trends rather, and etc. So the common method of collecting the data is through survey, and then with proper refinings of the survey material, we'll be able to collect the data as it is. Then raw data is hard to read. That's why we have to convert such into meaningful and useful form, which is information. And from there, that would be useful to business, the information versus data. Then process is incorporated in the manipulation of data, and then usually produces information and may produce more data as we go along the way. Now, it's possible that the information that we have generated out of the input, which is again the data before, would become data in another context, because this can be different in the point of reference. And then the piece of information output of a process in one context may be considered data input to a process in another context. So that's how it is. We have again to think of the context, because information, as said, could be a data in another situation. Then this is the IPO flow. When we say IPO flow, it means input, process, and output. And again, as said, the raw material is the input. The process would be the computerized information system processes that we do just to be able to manipulate the data or data for some, and to be able to produce the product that is information. So we have to take note that information is not going to be useful at all times, but to be useful, it has to be relevant. Mean to say it is having the bearing on the situation. It has to be complete, and it has to be accurate. Complete on the sense that whatever is needed in the situation, it is there. Accurate because the information is being able to contain valid and, of course, information that can be verified. So, of course, accurate because it has to be that is. Then in business, information must also be current. So that connects to relevance or being relevant, since it is occurring on the situation that is happening, and it has to be cost effective. So we must take note that the benefits must always exceed the cost. Then it's also very important, aside from knowing data and information, to know what system is. This is the array, or this is the group of components that work together to achieve goal or goal. So the system will have to accept the input and then process and produce the necessary output along the way. And then we have to take note that the system is again composed of input, process, and output, and the plural sense of the words. And then in that case, because they're in a group, therefore they achieve multiple goals. And a system will have to be composed of subsystems or components of such of a larger system. And we also have to take note again, just like with data and information, that this is going to be contextual or referential, in the sense that a system can be a subsystem in another and vice versa, depending again with the point of reference. Since the subsystems compose the major systems, therefore, they have their sub-goals that would contribute to the main goal with the system. And then subsystems can also receive input from the other subsystems and transfer output, and vice versa. Then this is an example of a computerized environment, specifically in an accounting system that is computerized, in which the accounting system being the system is composed of the several subsystems from AP, accounts payable, GL, general ledger, AR, accounts receivable, and then if processed all together would be able to create the accounting report, perhaps the financial statements, and then could show to us the status, problem areas. So this is the sample of a system. Then we have to take note that when the subcomponents, which are the subsystems, would be having their sub goals or subsystem goals that would contribute to the main goal. Therefore, they are thinking as a whole or as a system, in which whatever goals contributed by each subsystem would contribute to the bigger whole. So that's how systems would think. And then the powerful management approach that creates a framework for problem solving and decision making. And this keeps the managers or helps keep them focused on the overall goals. Otherwise, the opposite can happen, which is sub-optimization, in which the personal interests of the managers would be blocking the overall systems or corporate goals. On another context, database is the collection of the electronic records that we have processed or the electronic versions of the information. Then ISS automate exchange of information among the subsystems. To continue, we have to take note that humans as we are slow normally in terms of processing the information, especially in volumes and bulk, and we are susceptible also in creating or making mistakes. So that's why normally for routinary processes, that's why computers are there. However, computers normally cannot make decisions by themselves, so human element is still there unless they're programmed to do so. And even so, these decisions normally are not yet being able to be 100% accurate, or if they're been there already in today's world, but not all. So that's why humans are still part of the decision-making processes. And then synergy is when, for example, various resources are able to produce outputs in which the sum of the outputs of the separate resources, if they're combined, would be less than the output as a whole. Mean to say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So 1 plus 1 is not 2, it's 3. That's synergy if we combine resources. And that's how important it is to combine human and computer, because that would result or translate into efficient processing of data. If you are going to look at this figure, the different qualities and functions of humans as well as their abilities, and that's found on the left side, while computers are found on the right side. If we combine them together, that would result to synergy. Then these are the trends that have made information systems important in businesses. So these are the benefits that we can gather. Should we do synergy, or should we do combinations of humans and computers? And we call these as synergistic benefits because they would result out of the combinations of the two. So in that case, we'll be able to increase the power and decrease cost, which is very important for businesses, for computers and data storage devices. Capacity could also grow or increase, and then variety and ingenuity of computer programs. So in other words, there would be multitude of them, various functions of them can be incorporated. Then communications as well as the links, as what you've said, could be faster, especially with the internet. We can have available, reliable, affordable, and fast communications. Internet would grow also, and then there can be increasing computer literacy of the workforce. So a lot of people would know how to use and how to manipulate computers then in the process. Then these are the components of our information systems. The data has been explained, the hardware, which are the physical elements of the computers, while the intangible ones are the software. Telecommunications, so what we use in communicating with people. And then, of course, the electronic data has been or is transmitted. People, very important, the human element, and then the procedures that we do, the rules, the protocols that we should know in terms of data processing and information systems. Then to be able to process data, as what you've said, there would be the input, the data, and then normally in business sense, this would be the transaction, which is the business event. And then if processed all together, the system could be the TPS. This is one example, transaction processing system, and also the devices that we have known from our computer science subjects. Then to be processed into information, and the processes would be the data processing. Calculations could be made on inputs. Then the outputs that we will be producing, of course, will be in the form of information. The devices could be in the form of printers and speakers, for example. Again, we know this from CS subjects. And the storage, so how do we keep our data or data in the form of electronic information? So we can use, for example, optical discs, that we have known before, like CDs, compact discs, and we also now have DVDs. Before we have the floppy disk, but now of course not used. We have anyway our hard disks or hard drives. We also have our flash drives. Then we also have our external hard drives. All right, so that's it for the first chapter. Hopefully you learned something from this session. Thank you very much and God bless us all.